Hello, hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to explore data types in Golang. So let's get started. First of all, Golang has three basic data types, and they are boolean, numeric, and string. Now let's see a real example of boolean in Golang. So head over to VS Code and then just start writing today's code. For that reason, I'm just defining a variable using the var keyword and naming the variable something like is active, and its value is equal to true. So in boolean you can have either true or false. So you can have either true or false. And by the way, in Golang you can write a comment using double slash. So it's a comment, and comment means it is not going to be executed. So it's just for us to explain something. All right, now let's print it out. So fmt dot println and just is active. Save it and run the command. Go run hello.go, and we have received our desired output, which is true. So here, as you can see, if we hover over the variable is active, it is indeed showing us the type is boolean. So Golang automatically inferred the type based on the value we have assigned here. Also, you can explicitly write the type here. So you can also write it is a boolean, so with the bool keyword. Alright, that's the basic of boolean. Now in the previous video we have seen some examples of using string. Now let us have some examples of numeric. So in Golang, numeric also has two branches, and they are integer and float. So in simple terms, integer are basically like a whole number without any point, and float are numbers with decimal point. So that's the basic. There are also complex definition for integer and float. You can find them in your high school book, but I'm just gonna skip those for simple demonstration purpose. Alright, let's see some basic example of int and float. So we are defining a variable named age, and its value is 10. And similarly, let's print it out. Age. Save it. So as you can see, we have assigned a whole number without any point, and Golang is going to automatically infer the type as int. Okay, so run it, and we have received our desired output. And yes, obviously we can explicitly write the type here, so you can also write int here. Okay, that's the gist of integer. Now let's see how we can use float. So float is basically number with decimal points, so something like 10.235, and it's already showing us error. That's because we have explicitly set the type as integer, but we are assigning the value float here. So if we remove the keyword int from here, then we can see our error line has been removed. And if we hover over the age keyword, then you can see it is float 64. So it's automatically inferred as a float type. Okay, so similarly, let's print it out. And once again, we have received our desired output. Okay, now let's zoom in a little bit for better demonstrating purpose. Okay, I think that's good enough. So in Golang, integer is basically divided between two branches mainly, and they are signed and unsigned integer. But signed integer also has four variants, and they are int 8, int 16, int 32, and int 64. And by the way, this number basically means bits. So 8-bit means 1 byte. So basically these are like 1 byte, 2 byte, 4 byte, and 8 bytes. So similarly, like signed integer, unsigned integer also contains like uint 8, uint 16, 32, and 64. And the difference between signed and unsigned integer is signed integer contains both the positive and negative numbers, but unsigned integer contains only the positive numbers. And that's it. Okay, so now let's see a quick example of using this. So head over to your code editor again, and then let's writing the type of this variable as int 8. So it's int 8 now, so it's 8-bit integer. So as you can see the type. And also in Golang, you can print out the output for this variable age. So we are printing out the value for this variable. You can also print out the type. For that reason, you have to use the reflect package. So let's import the reflect package. You can just write it here and press the enter button. It will get automatically imported, or you can also manually type it out here. It's like using this syntax. So import and then first bracket and then the name of your first package, which was fmt, to print out the message, and then the name of your second package without any comma or semicolon whatsoever. So we are going to use a method called typeof. So I guess it's typeof, yes. And then the name of the variable, which is age in our case, and that string to convert the type into a string. So save it and then run the program again. So you can see we have initially got the value of the variable, which is 10, and then the type of the variable, which is int 8. So you can print out multiple values in println using the comma operator. So if you put like multiple things using the commas, they all will get printed on the terminal. So let us change the type and experiment something with uint. So unsigned integer now, and let's change the bit to like 16. Okay, and also let's write out some fancy messages, something like age and then comma, and here like after the age we want to show the type, so type is that, and then save it and run the program again in the terminal. You can see our age is 10 and type is unsigned integer 16. Okay, so remember earlier I told you that unsigned integer can contain only the positive numbers and not the negative numbers. So if you like try to assign a negative number here, then you will immediately get an error saying that you cannot like assign negative number into an unsigned variable. So if you want to use negative numbers, then you have to use the signed integer without any u prefix. So similar to integer, the float also contains two branches, and they are fairly easy, float 32 and float 64, and the default type for float variable is float 64. So that might wonder you, what is the default type for integer? That actually depends on your system. If your system is like 32-bit, then the default type for integer would be int32, and if your system is on 64-bit, then the default type for your system would be int64. So let's check out the float one. Let's say I'm just naming the type as float. So only float will not be valid because there are basically float 32 and float 64. So for now, let's use float 64, and then you can assign a float value. And by the way, float contains both the whole number and the number with fractions. So that's why you can both use 10 or 10.63 or something like 25. Now let's save it and run it and see what it gives us. So as you can see, our value is minus 10 point something and type is float 64. So you can also use float 32 here. That's not a big deal. So 32, not 312, that's 32. Yep. Alright, now then let's have some honorable mentions of some rarely used types. So first of all, I would like to discuss about complex numbers. So complex numbers are basically the numbers with imaginary parts. Remember your high school or college days lessons? There you used to use like complex numbers. So you can use complex numbers in Golang. Let's have a quick recap of how we can use the complex numbers. So head over to your code editor and then change the type of this variable to complex 64 for now, and then it's like a complex number 1 plus 2i. Okay, save it, run it again. So we have received our result. So as you can see, the number value is 1 plus 2i and the type is complex 64. Also you can remove this part, that will also show the type as complex. As you can see, if I hover, it's by default complex 128, by the way, for complex numbers. And after that you get byte, which is an alias for unsigned integer 8. So what does that mean is basically you can write byte instead of uint 8 in your code like this. So let's say it's a number and you have return the type as byte. Save it and you will see that the type is byte. And if you save and print it out, you can see at this part we are getting the type as uint8 because it's the alias for uint8. Okay, and then you also get another alias which is called rune, which is an alias for int32. So it's similar to like byte. You can write rune instead of int32 in your code. So folks, that's it for today. I'll catch you on next video. Aloha.